This budget would cut universities about $49 million. Is that going to increase pressure to raise tuition, reduce services?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to have Art kind of explain the details of that number that you just presented so you can hear all sides of that argument. And Art, if you don't mind this, because he can present it much better than I can, but we've spent a lot of time in communicating this to the universities and to others because there are several factors involved regarding enrollment and several other factors. So I'm going to have Art explain that in just a second.
If you go to page 40 of the budget books, you'll see the beginning of the reductions for the university system. And I want to emphasize again what I said earlier, that $49 million is not a reduction from this year. It's a $32 million reduction from this year. It's a $49 million from what was originally budgeted this coming year. About $7 million of that, for example, is decrease in funding for the universities because their enrollment is going down, plain and simple. The out-of-state tuition rate, just as we have made that change already for athletic scholarships, which means that the university receiving the higher out-of-state tuition rate and not lose any money when the state saves money from that area. Also, the governor prioritized the reductions we do have, for example, to try and minimize the impact on the classroom. So, for example, you'll see in there a list of reductions for centers, about $13 million. Many of those centers form core academic functions. They're integrated with the degree awarding programs, have hundreds of students participate in it. Some of those centers have 0 students participate in it, are not core to the education mission. But there, the governor gave the discretion and flexibility to the Board of Governors, and they can delegate to the trustees to identify where those savings should be. Then overall, the management flexibility is being given again, as requested by the university, for them to identify further savings. And we did identify some savings ourselves. For example, there's $9 million excess in payments over above the university's actual utility bills. So simply have accurate, transparent budgeting utility bill at what it should be, around $9 million extra, is just good budgeting. We've been working with the Board of Governors and the General Administration on these, so they're very familiar with them.
We've actually been on the phone with the chairman of the Board of Governors this morning and some of their leadership team, and so that we've been in the loop with not only the universities but the community colleges in June and the whole council state during this whole process. So, but again, these were some of the tough decisions that had to be made, but we think they're the best long-term decisions. And not only did the universities have to make some cost-saving adjustments, but so do many departments underneath my responsibility. Yes, sir, in the back. Yeah.
Governor, when you talk about revising the film strategy,
yes.
what exactly does that mean as far as the film industry is concerned? What do you mean by focusing on the long-term strategy?
We're basically setting up a tax structure very similar to treating it almost as a nonprofit, but where you get, we're wanting to encourage capital investment that is on the ground for the long term, whether it be in any city in North Carolina, which will really encourage more of the long-term long-term studios and full-time employment for many years, as opposed to a short-term commercial or a TV show coming in for a brief period of time, or what we saw during the Democratic convention several years ago was when, for example, The Daily Show would come in and get several $100,000 credit, and that was money right out of our budget, which we could have given to teachers. But we'll give you more detail on exactly how the breakdown is, but it's almost treating it where they get exempted from sales tax and other taxes based upon the taxes they actually pay in North Carolina. I think that's quite accurate, isn't it? Yes, sir.
The $1,000 increase for state employees for salary and benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Break that down. How much of that is going to actually get benefits, and how much are they going to actually see?
Art, why don't you get in details on that?
$809 in cash in the paycheck, and the remaining amount is for benefits. That may vary according to overall salary because it's a lump sum. So depending upon your overall compensation level, it may vary. On average, we calculate that to be $809 for the pay and the remainder for the benefits.
Let me get you the purple tie or the blue. And if you could introduce state your name too. I haven't done that. I apologize. Who you're with?
Dan Bush with BD News Washington.
Right.
Budget proposes funding for 19 full-time jobs in Diener for coal ash spill regulation. Can you talk about how the administration came up with that number?
Secretary Scavarla, he is not here today, and I apologize, I don't have anyone representing Diener, but he gave a very specific proposal based upon the number of coal ash they have in North Carolina, and I think also on the increasing the inspection rate of the coal ash ponds. I think, in fact, we were, since my administration came in, and I'm going to let Secretary Scavarla correct me if I'm wrong, we actually increased the inspection during my tenure beyond what the regulations require, but we need more workforce to continue that and even increase it more, especially with the safety of the dams is our major issue with that. And so that was a recommendation directly from Secretary Scavarla and his staff, and it's a pretty substantial investment. Yes, sir.
Trip Gabriel from the New York Times.
Trip. Welcome to spend some money while you're here.
If the General Assembly on the subject of education sends you a bill that repeals the Common Core, is that something you would sign?
What I anticipate is I anticipate us finding common ground on Common Core. And I think a lot of the issues have nothing to do with the establishment of high standards, especially in math and reading, which I think everyone's for. It's more of how we implement Common Core and the execution of Common Core regarding the testing. And that's where I'm going to be working with Eric Buchanan and June Atkinson and the Lieutenant Governor and the education committees on how can we better execute the process of Common Core. I think what's happened with Common Core is there's been a lot of everything that goes wrong in education now, everyone's, well, that was Common Core. And it's frankly hard to separate what's what. And the same thing happened with Race to the Top. A lot of the things were directly related to Race to the Top, which was a federal program, had nothing to do with Common Core. So that's where we need an extensive study, is what actually was Common Core, what are the issues related to it, and then also what are some other testing issues that have nothing to do with Common Core, but frankly we've got to fix. And that's where Eric Buchanan is going to be working on that issue, working very, very closely with the legislature. Yes, sir.
Gary Robertson, Associated Press. Can you tell me what the decision-making was regarding these increased hospital and LME MCO provider assessments? $75 million.
Yeah, that was a very tough subject to deal with, some very, very tough decisions in which we had some extensive conversations with the hospitals, especially UNC and East Carolina. And
This is a separate issue.
oh, I'm sorry. This is a separate issue. I'm going to let Art talk about this other issue. We had about 3 hospital issues during this time, and your acronyms are killing me right now, Gary.
The state of North Carolina already has an assessment program with most healthcare providers for physical health, where there's an assessment which the state retains part of, and they used to draw down the maximum amount of federal money for the services they provide. The LME MCOs provide mental health. They do not participate in that program. And other states, they are eligible for participating in that. So North Carolina will be joining other states in doing that. This is based on advice from council and HHS and looking what other states do. So it'll be the first time they do it, but the net effect should be the LME MCOs will be whole, the state will save money, and according to the laws and rules as written, we'll be maximizing the federal dollars to help cover those costs.
I think it's a very wise decision that we made, taking advantage of the federal dollars that are available right now, and I think it's a very positive change for both us and the hospitals. I'm sorry, I thought you were referring to another subject which I won't follow up on. Gary, thank you very much. Yes, sir. Right here, either one.
I noticed in your budget you don't deal with the potential move of SBI. Some lawmakers are already looking at it as an idea that they did last year. You weren't in favor of it. Do you look any more favorably at that this year, or do you think the SBI ought to stay?
We did not put that in our budget. I have not heard the arguments regarding the advantages as of yet. I didn't last year, but I'm going to have my Secretary, Frank Perry, meet with the legislatures to find out if, in fact, are there efficiencies, and then once they relay that information to me, I'll make that decision whether to support that or not. But I have not seen the detailed report on what efficiencies or collaboration position would be impacted in a positive way. And if there are, I will consider it, but I have yet to see that detailed conversation exist. So I'm waiting to have Frank Perry, my secretary, Frank Perry, talk to the legislators who are interested in that proposal. Yes, ma'am.
Rose Hope from North Carolina Health News. Looking here at the pre-K funding and noticing that some of the money is coming from TANF block grants. How's that going to affect TANF, which tends to fund things like food stamps and other benefits for low-income families?
Art, do you want to give a quick comment on that, Tanif?
Overall, the TANF block grant funding is increasing. Sometimes in the past, it's been left to the legislature to allocate that additional funds. The governor, McCrory, in last year's budget and this year's budget applies those funds where they can most be needed. So we did both use TANF funds. We also used additional lottery money for pre-K and bringing it up to the maximum it was beforehand. So again, it is a legitimate strategy to use additional federal funds or maximize federal dollars to fund crucial state needs and free up and save state dollars for other needs, including the pay increases.
Yes, sir.
Paul O'Connor with the Insider.
Thanks, Phil.
Question that Art would be.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm really hurt by that. Sorry, go ahead and ask.
It's there's a teacher wrote a letter to the editor of one of the local papers recently saying that she would prefer the $1,000 because she makes less than $50,000, so 2%. She's actually going to get a smaller raise than everybody else.
She's less than 50,000?
Yeah, she's making less than $50,000. So is
No, actually, that's.
with all the steps and everything is there. Is
No,
she understands?
yeah.
The short answer, I don't know without knowing what pay step she's on, and she doesn't know because she's not seen the new pay step schedule. That's why we have available. Elizabeth Groverstein, our Senior Budget Officer for Education, has 8.5 by 11 copies of the new pay schedule. It will be in the budget bill spelled out. And the pay steps, as you advance pay steps, depending on which step you are, your advance may be 1.2%, 1.7% or more. Some teachers, aside from the first years with 7 years less experience, some teachers receive as much as 4.3% increase. So this individual teacher, without not knowing more of her level of experience and where she is, she may be mistaken as to how much increase she's going to get.
This is one reason we had a very difficult job in just applying every increase to every employee, because each employee is in a totally different circumstance. And we found not only that true with teachers, but also with highway patrol and magistrates and other areas of specially stepped up programs. So that was one problem, one reason we put averages in our releases to you, because you'll find circumstances where someone's much more and someone might be slightly less. So that's the complication we have. Let me take two more questions and then we'll get going.
Bo Minnick, WNCN. Governor, you mentioned that many agencies will have to make tough decisions in the future here to meet your goals. Could you maybe elaborate on that? Is there a target that you're looking at in terms of a number, in terms of further cuts across the board at agencies?
No, I think the budget clearly reflects the numbers, but I will say this, my cabinet team, we're constantly looking at, in fact, some of the legislation we're going to be seeking is in personnel laws and giving us more flexibility to move people, for example, transfer people over 30-some miles, which isn't allowed at this point in time. We're even looking at certain personnel policies where if we lose a person due to retirement or something, where we can have a system where we don't necessarily fill that job because we combine that job for other people to do, but then we can increase the pay of that person who takes on more responsibilities. So this is the flexibility that we're seeking. So we would increase the pay of an individual maybe by a large percentage. I'll probably read about in the paper, but a large percentage, but in fact then we return maybe 20 or 30% of the money savings back into the general budget, which would allow us to make other priority decisions. And this is the type of flexibility that we're looking at in our personnel laws that Neil Alexander and my cabinet secretaries are having constant conversation about. And we just do not have that type of flexibility at this point in time. Let me, one more question here. Yes, ma'am.
Jessica Jones with North Carolina Public Radio, and I just came out and just asking this question. You mentioned the puppy mill bill again, so everybody knows that it's one of my favorite topics. But, we know that the personal on the Senate last night, so my question is, did you, for the Senate, the River Bone?
With lots of meat on it. Well, one of the things we're doing is recommendations we have in our budget is we're transferring the enforcement from agriculture over to public safety. And we think that's a very good plan. And we're going to be also recommending some other aspects of the puppy mill bill. But believe me, we're not going to give up. We think public opinion is with us. We think the general public is with us. And the First Lady is with us. And so is my dog, Mo, who has a new website. And he'll be talking about it shortly on his new website. So we'll be lobbying very heavily. But we've made some changes as a result to give more comfort to the agricultural industry, to ensure that we're talking about pets and puppy mills and not agricultural animals at this point in time. All right, I'm going to do one more and then we're stepping out. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, I see that you have money sent in the HHS budget for the beginning stages, as you put it, of Medicaid reform.
Yes.
What we've heard from the leadership in both the chambers is that they don't think they're going to have the time or the bandwidth to address that issue here. Are you an optimist?
We have no choice but to be an optimist because, as Art clearly mentioned, when I came into office, we had about a $530 million misprojection or misforecast. This year, it was 90.
70 million. Right?
70 million. We've kind of fallen in between 50 and 90. We do not know what it might be next year until we get more consistency in the program. And Aldona Voss, Secretary Voss, who I'm telling you, she has just done an outstanding job, and I hope she gets the headlines that she deserves for the work that she does, as opposed to some of the other criticism during the past 12 months. She has worked tirelessly to come up with what we believe is a strategic implementation and a systematic, common sense change of our current system. And Secretary Voss and I will be going out on the road next week to promote this new system with doctors, with hospitals, with other people in the medical community and nursing homes to talk about why it's so important to begin the steps to reform Medicaid. But I'll just tell this to my legislative colleagues, is that the longer we wait, the more difficulty we're going to have. And we think this is a very systematic, common sense approach that Secretary Voss and her team have put together. And again, we're going to be going outside the belt line to make our case, and then hopefully those people will come inside and express the importance of it. So no, we're not going to give up. And listen, it's a very, very complex subject, and it is in showing respect for my legislature, it's a very tough short session subject, but it's a subject that has a sense of urgency because of the amount of money in addition to the quality of service that is required for Medicaid. Thank you all very much. It's an honor to be here.